Nervous laughter echoed among the guests, but it wasn't joy, it was discomfort. There I was, at my own son's wedding, being accused of ruining his big day. In that moment, I felt my face burn, not with shame, but with indignation. Everyone's eyes were on me, and my son, the very man I had raised and supported, was throwing words at me I never thought I'd hear. But when they all believed I would stay silent, I took a deep breath and thought, tonight, they'll finally know the truth. Because that night I carried something with me that would change everything, and when I revealed what I had in my hands, silence turned into shock. And my pain was about to become my victory. This is my story. Hi, I'm Richard, and today you'll discover how a father who was wronged managed to turn the tables in a way no one ever expected. I share this story, hoping it reaches your heart and inspires you never to bow your head to injustice, because dignity and truth cannot be silenced. But before I go on, I ask you to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Well, before I reveal what changed that night forever, I need to tell you who I am and how I ended up in the middle of such a humiliating moment. My name is Richard Matthews, and at 65 years old, I've lived long enough to understand that life has a peculiar way of testing our character. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Country Club in Connecticut was decorated with white roses and golden lights, everything Amanda had dreamed of for her wedding. 200 guests filled the space, the cream of New England society, all dressed in their finest attire. The October evening air carried the scent of autumn leaves through the open terrace doors. I stood there in my navy blue suit, the same one I'd worn to my wife Sarah's funeral 3 years earlier. It was the best I owned, though I knew it paled in comparison to the designer tuxedos surrounding me. My weathered hands, marked by decades of construction work, gripped a leather briefcase that contained secrets no one in that room could imagine. "Dad, you're embarrassing me," Michael had whispered earlier, his voice sharp with irritation. "Can't you just enjoy the evening without creating drama?" Creating drama. Those words stung more than he knew. For 40 years, I had worked tirelessly to give my son everything I never had. I started Matthews Construction with nothing but a borrowed pickup truck and a toolbox inherited from my father. Every dawn found me on construction sites. Every evening hunched over financial reports, building an empire one brick at a time. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very ballroom where I was being humiliated had been renovated by my company 5 years ago. I had personally overseen the installation of the mahogany panels that now witnessed my public shame. The Italian marble beneath my feet had been selected by my own hands, each tile a testament to the craftsmanship I had dedicated my life to perfecting. Sarah would have known what to do. My wife of 35 years had possessed an intuition that I envied. She could read people like I read blueprints, seeing the structural flaws that would eventually cause collapse. "Richard," she'd whispered during her final days in the hospital, "promise me you'll protect Michael from people who only see dollar signs when they look at him." I had made that promise, holding her frail hand as machines beeped around us. Sarah had seen something in Amanda that I was only beginning to understand. But by then, it was too late to voice her concerns. Cancer had stolen her voice before she could warn our son about the woman who would soon destroy our family. Standing in that ballroom, surrounded by whispers and judgmental stares, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment, the countless sacrifices, the missed family dinners while I worked late to secure contracts, the weekends spent on job sites instead of baseball games. Every decision had been made with Michael's future in mind. Yet here he was, my only child, the boy I had taught to throw a curveball and helped with calculus homework, choosing to believe his new wife over the man who had given him everything. The betrayal cut deeper than any business loss I had ever experienced. Amanda stood beside him in her $15,000 designer gown, her blonde hair perfectly styled, diamonds glittering at her throat. She was undeniably beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads when she entered a room. But beauty, I had learned, could be the most dangerous disguise of all. "Richard has been trying to sabotage our relationship from the beginning," she announced. To the gathered crowd, her voice carrying that practiced tremor of a victim. "He's jealous that Michael has found happiness." The guests murmured among themselves, some nodding in agreement. I recognized several faces from the country club, people who had known my family for decades. Yet their expressions showed doubt, as if they were seeing me for the first time and questioning everything they thought they knew. That's when I realized the true scope of Amanda's manipulation. This wasn't just about tonight. This was the culmination of months, perhaps years, of carefully planted seeds designed to isolate Michael from everyone who truly cared about him. But Amanda had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated the man she was trying to destroy. At 65, I had survived the collapse of the housing market in 2008, the death of my beloved wife, and countless business challenges that would have broken lesser men. I hadn't built a multi-million-dollar company by backing down from fights worth fighting. The briefcase in my hand contained more than documents. It contained justice. And before this night was over, everyone in that ballroom would understand the difference between a man defending his honor and a father protecting his son from the biggest mistake of his life. The story of how I became the villain in my own son's life begins 4 decades ago in a small apartment above Murphy's Hardware store in Waterbury, Connecticut. I was 25 years old, newly married to Sarah, and we had exactly $247 in our checking account. The smell of sawdust and metal polish from the store below had become our daily perfume, but it was the scent of possibility to me. I remember the morning everything changed. October 15th, 1982. I was drinking coffee from a chipped mug, reading the want ads in the Hartford Courant, when Sarah placed her hand on my shoulder. "Richard," she said softly, "I'm pregnant." That moment rewrote my entire future. Suddenly, the small contracting jobs I'd been taking weren't enough. I needed to build something substantial, something that would provide security for the family we were creating. That afternoon, I took our entire savings, borrowed $2,000 from Sarah's father, and bought a used Ford pickup truck and some basic tools. Matthew's Construction was born in that hardware store parking lot. The early years were brutal. I worked construction during the day and took evening classes in business management at the community college. Sarah worked at the local diner until her pregnancy made standing for 8 hours impossible. We ate a lot of beans and rice, drove that same pickup truck until the odometer gave up counting miles, and dreamed of better days. Michael was born on a snowy February morning in 1983. I held him in the hospital, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and made a vow that he would never know the financial struggles that had defined my childhood. My own father had been a good man, but limited by circumstances and lack of opportunity. I was determined to break that cycle. By the time Michael was walking, I had hired my first employee, Tom Rodriguez, a skilled carpenter who believed in my vision. We worked on small residential projects, always delivering quality that exceeded expectations. Word spread slowly but steadily through the tight-knit communities of central Connecticut. The Matthews name began to mean something: reliability, craftsmanship, integrity. I remember Michael's first day of kindergarten. While other fathers waved goodbye and went to office jobs, I was on a rooftop in West Hartford, installing shingles and taking business calls on a bulky cell phone that cost more than our monthly rent. But every dollar earned was an investment in Michael's future. The breakthrough came in 1989 when we landed the contract to renovate the Riverside Country Club. It was the kind of project that separated small contractors from real businesses. The job required a crew of 15, sophisticated project management, and attention to detail that would satisfy some of Connecticut's most demanding clients. I spent months preparing that bid, consulting with architects, studying every detail of the historic building. The night before the presentation, Sarah found me at the kitchen table at 3 a.m., still reviewing specifications. "You're going to make yourself sick," she said, rubbing my shoulders. "You've done everything you can." When they called to tell me we'd won the contract, I couldn't speak for a full minute. Sarah cried. 6-year-old Michael didn't understand why his parents were crying and laughing at the same time, but he hugged us anyway. That project changed everything. The renovation was featured in Connecticut Magazine. Wealthy clients began requesting Matthews Construction specifically. By 1995, we were building custom homes for executives and celebrities who valued our reputation for excellence. Michael grew up on those job sites during summer vacations. I taught him to read blueprints, to recognize quality materials, to understand that true success came from doing things right the first time. He seemed fascinated by the process, asking intelligent questions about structural engineering and project management. "Will I work with you when I grow up, Dad?" he asked one afternoon when he was 12, watching our crew pour a foundation for a mansion in Greenwich. "You'll do whatever makes you happy, son," I replied. "But you'll have choices because of what we're building here." Harvard wasn't even a dream I dared voice until Michael's high school guidance counselor called us in for a conference. "Michael has exceptional potential," she explained. "His SAT scores and academic record could open doors to any university in the country." The application fee alone was more than I'd spent on myself in months, but watching Michael's face as he researched the business program made every sacrifice worthwhile. When the acceptance letter arrived, Sarah and I held each other and cried again, just like that day I won the country club contract. Harvard tuition in the late 1990s was astronomical. Even with financial aid, the cost would strain our resources. But I had been preparing for this moment his entire life. Every early morning, every missed weekend, every dollar saved instead of spent had been leading to this opportunity. I took out a second mortgage on our house. I worked 18-hour days, taking on projects I would normally decline. Sarah returned to work at the hospital, despite her own health challenges that were just beginning to surface. We never told Michael about the financial pressure. As far as he knew, his education was a given, not a sacrifice. The phone calls from Cambridge filled our house with pride. Michael was excelling, making connections, preparing for a future that would surpass anything I had achieved. He spent summers interning at investment firms instead of construction sites, wearing suits instead of work boots. "I'm proud of what you've built, Dad," he told me during his junior year. "But I think I can build something even bigger in finance." I encouraged him, even as I felt the distance growing between us. His new vocabulary included terms I didn't understand, references to a world I had never entered. But isn't that what every parent wants? For their child to surpass them? Sarah's diagnosis came during Michael's senior year. Ovarian cancer stage 3, detected too late for easy treatment. We kept it from Michael initially, not wanting to distract him during his final semester. But as her condition worsened, hiding the truth became impossible. Michael graduated summa cum laude on a beautiful May afternoon in 2005. Sarah was there, wearing a wig and a brave smile, watching our son accept his degree from one of the world's most prestigious universities. The photo from that day sits on my desk. 3 generations of dreams realized in a single moment. She died 8 months later, on a January morning when snow covered everything in peaceful white. Michael was working in New York by then, building his career at a prestigious investment firm. He came home for the funeral, of course, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. Grief didn't fit neatly into his new life schedule. Standing in that ballroom 7 years later, accused of sabotaging his happiness, I wondered if the success I had worked so hard to provide had somehow made him forget the foundation upon which it was built. Had I given him so much that he no longer understood the value of what he'd received? The briefcase in my hand contained the answer to that question, along with evidence that would change everything he thought he knew about the woman he had just married. Amanda Blackwood entered our lives like a perfectly orchestrated performance, and I was foolish enough to applaud during the opening act. Michael brought her home for Thanksgiving dinner in 2019, exactly 2 years after Sarah's death. The timing should have been my first clue, but grief had made me desperate to see my son happy again. She stepped out of Michael's BMW wearing a camel-colored coat that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, her smile radiant and her handshake firm. "Mr. Matthews," she said, her voice carrying that polished accent of private schools and summer homes. "Michael has told me so much about you. I'm honored to finally meet the man who built such an impressive empire." Empire. The word felt strange, coming from someone who had grown up with actual empires. But I was flattered despite myself. At 62, I wasn't accustomed to beautiful women half my age showing interest in my achievements. Sarah would have seen through the performance immediately, but Sarah wasn't there to protect us anymore. "Please call me Richard," I said, leading them into the house I had built with my own hands. The oak floors gleamed, the stone fireplace crackled with warmth, and family photos lined the mantel. It was a home that represented 4 decades of hard work and love. Amanda's eyes moved through the rooms with the calculating gaze of an appraiser. "This is absolutely charming," she said, though something in her tone suggested she found it quaint rather than impressive. "So rustic and authentic." Rustic. I filed that word away for later analysis. Dinner conversation revealed layers of Amanda's background that should have raised red flags. Her father, Charles Blackwood, apparently owned textile mills throughout New England. Her mother, Patricia, served on the boards of several charitable organizations. They summered in the Hamptons, wintered in Palm Beach, and maintained residences. In Boston and Connecticut, Amanda graduated from Wellesley, Michael announced proudly, as if her pedigree elevated his own status. "She's been working in art curation, but she's taking time to explore her options, exploring her options." At 28, with an Ivy League education, she was exploring options. I thought about Michael at that age, already climbing the ladder at his investment firm, driven by the work ethic I had instilled in him. "What kind of art interests you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Oh, contemporary pieces mostly," she replied vaguely. "I have an eye for investments that appreciate over time." Everything I would later realize was about investments and appreciation to Amanda, including my son. Over the following months, I watched their relationship develop with growing unease. Amanda was undeniably charming, but her charm felt manufactured, like a product designed to appeal to specific demographics. She laughed at Michael's jokes with perfect timing, agreed with his opinions without adding substantive thoughts of her own, and somehow managed to steer every conversation toward material things. The first time she visited Michael's apartment in Manhattan, she immediately began suggesting improvements. "This couch is fine for a bachelor," she told him, "but we'll need something more sophisticated for entertaining." As if their future together was already decided, within 6 months Michael's apartment had been completely transformed. Gone were the comfortable pieces he'd chosen himself, replaced by furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. "Amanda has such great taste," he told me during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. "She's helping me understand quality. The word stung because I had spent my entire life teaching him about quality, the kind that comes from honest materials and skilled craftsmanship, not designer labels and inflated price tags. The engagement announcement came via a phone call on a Tuesday morning in March 2020. "Dad, I have wonderful news," Michael said, his voice filled with an excitement I hadn't heard since his Harvard. "Acceptance. Amanda and I are engaged." I should have been happy. Instead, I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. "Congratulations, son," I managed. "Have you set a date?" "October 15th, 2022, he replied. "Amanda wants time to plan everything perfectly." October 15th, the anniversary of the day I started Matthew's construction, the day that changed my family's destiny. The coincidence felt like a cosmic joke. The engagement party at the Blackwood family estate in Greenwich was my first real glimpse into Amanda's world. The mansion sprawled across 20 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, with a circular driveway that could accommodate 50 cars and a ballroom that had hosted governors and senators. Charles Blackwood was a tall, silver-haired man with the bearing of someone born to privilege. His handshake was firm but brief, his smile polite but distant. "Richard," he said, as if testing the sound of my name. "Michael tells us you're in construction." "I own Matthew's Construction," I corrected. "Gently. We specialize in high-end residential and commercial projects." "Ah," he nodded, but his expression suggested he viewed construction as something slightly distasteful, like a necessary service performed by other people. Patricia Blackwood was equally polished, her blonde hair styled to perfection, her jewelry understated, but obviously expensive. "Richard, how lovely," she said when we were introduced. "Amanda has told us so much about Michael's background, as if my son's origins were something to be overcome rather than celebrated." The party was filled with people who spoke in the coded language of old money. They discussed summer houses and charitable committees, dropped names of politicians and celebrities, and somehow managed to make small talk feel like a test I was failing. I watched Michael navigate these conversations with ease, laughing at references I didn't understand, nodding along with opinions about art and politics that had never been discussed in our home. When had he learned to speak their language so fluently? "Your son is quite impressive," Charles Blackwood told me during a quiet moment. "Excellent prospects in finance. Amanda has always been attracted to ambitious men." Always. The word suggested a pattern I didn't want to contemplate. Later that evening, as I drove home through the darkened Connecticut countryside, I called my old friend Detective Ray Sullivan. Ray had retired from the Hartford Police Department, but still did private investigation work for insurance companies and law firms. "Ray, I need a favor," I said. "I want you to run a background check on someone." "Personal or professional?" he asked. "Both. And Ray, I need you to be thorough." 3 weeks later, Ray called me back. "Richard, we need to meet, and you're not going to like what I found." The diner in Waterbury where we met was the same place Sarah had worked 40 years earlier. Ray slid a manila folder across the red vinyl booth, his expression grim. "Amanda Blackwood isn't who she claims to be," he said without preamble. "Her real name is Amanda Blake. She's from Albany, New York, not Greenwich. Her father wasn't a textile manufacturer. He was a car salesman who went bankrupt when she was 16. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were copies of records that painted a very different picture of the woman my son was planning to marry. "She's had 3 serious relationships in the past 10 years, Ray continued, all with wealthy men. The pattern is always the same: charm, engagement, then systematic financial manipulation before the relationship ends. One guy, a real estate developer in Boston, lost $200,000 before he figured out what was happening. The photographs showed Amanda at various social events, always with different men, always wearing expensive clothes and jewelry that someone else had paid for. The Blackwood identity is completely fabricated," Ray explained. "She spent 2 years researching old Connecticut families, then assumed the identity of a distant branch that had died out. The estate where she hosted that engagement party. She doesn't own it. She rented it for the weekend and hired actors to play her parents. I stared at the evidence, feeling pieces of a puzzle click into place. The vague answers about her work, the way she steered conversations away from specific details about her past, the calculating look in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. "Ray," I said, my voice barely steady, "what's her endgame with?" "Michael? Marriage, then divorce," he replied. "Connecticut's divorce laws are very favorable to spouses who can claim they gave up careers for marriage. She's been documenting every gift Michael gives her, every luxury they share. If she can stay married for 3 years, she'll be entitled to significant alimony based on the lifestyle he's provided." I thought about Michael's trust fund, the money I had set aside for his future, the inheritance he would receive when I died. Amanda wasn't just stealing my son's heart, she was stealing his entire future. "There's more," Ray said, pulling out another photograph. "She's currently married." The marriage certificate showed Amanda Blake married to a man named David Chen in Las Vegas, Nevada, dated 18 months earlier. The marriage had never been dissolved. "She's committing bigamy?" I asked. "Technically, yes, but more importantly, she's committing fraud. Every document she's signed as Amanda Blackwood, every legal agreement related to the wedding, it's all based on a false identity." I closed the folder and looked out the diner window at the street where I had grown up, where I had learned the value of honest work and genuine relationships. How had I failed to teach Michael to recognize the difference between real love and sophisticated manipulation? That night, I called Michael and asked if we could have dinner together, just the two of us. "Dad, I'm really busy with wedding planning," he said. "Can't it wait?" "It's important, son. We met at a steakhouse in Hartford, the same place I had taken him to celebrate his high school graduation. I brought copies of Ray's report, planning to show him the truth about the woman he was planning to marry. But before I could say anything, Michael held up his hand. "Dad, before you start, I need to tell you something. Amanda thinks you don't approve of our relationship." "Michael, there are things about Amanda you need to know." "See? This is exactly what she said would happen." His voice carried a disappointment that cut through me like a blade. "She said you'd try to sabotage our happiness because you're jealous of what we have." Jealous. The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Instead, I tried to hand him the folder. "Son, just look at this evidence." He pushed it away without opening it. "I don't want to see whatever conspiracy theories you've cooked up. Amanda warned me you might do something like this." Amanda had prepared him for my intervention, had already planted the seeds of doubt about my motives. She was several moves ahead of me in a game I was just beginning to understand. "Michael, I love you," I said. "Everything I've ever done has been to protect you and provide for your future." "Then support my marriage," he replied. "Stop trying to control my life." He left the restaurant without looking back, leaving me alone with evidence that could save him and no way to make him listen. That was the moment I realized Amanda's true genius. She hadn't just deceived Michael about her identity, she had convinced him that anyone who questioned her was the real threat. She had turned my love for my son into a weapon against me, but she had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated how far a father would go to protect his child, even from himself. What do you think? Have you ever tried to warn someone you love about a person who seemed wrong for them, only to have them turn against you instead? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. The months leading up to the wedding were like watching a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Amanda had successfully positioned herself as the victim of my unreasonable disapproval, while painting me as the controlling father who couldn't let go of his son. Every attempt I made to reach Michael was reframed as evidence of my obsessive behavior. Thank you for staying with me through this difficult part of my story. I promise you, the best is yet to come, and you'll understand why I had to endure these painful months to achieve something truly remarkable. The wedding planning became Amanda's stage for demonstrating just how thoroughly she had won. She'd call me with updates that were really opportunities to show her power over Michael. "Richard," she'd say, her voice sweet as poisoned honey, "Michael and I have decided on a destination honeymoon in Tuscany. 3 weeks. Isn't that wonderful? 3 weeks in Italy would cost more than most people's annual salary. But Michael was eager to prove his success to his new in-laws. Every decision was presented as their mutual choice, but I could see Amanda's influence in the escalating extravagance. The guest list was another battleground. "We're keeping it intimate," she announced during a family dinner, "just close friends and family." But somehow, intimate meant 200 people, most of whom were Amanda's connections from her fabricated social circle. I watched my son transform during these months, becoming someone I barely recognized. The Michael I had raised was thoughtful and grounded, someone who understood the value of money because he'd seen how hard it was to earn. This new version threw around thousands of dollars without blinking, eager to impress people who measured worth by spending power. "Dad, you seem tense," he told me during one of our increasingly rare conversations. "Amanda thinks maybe you should talk to someone about your adjustment issues." Adjustment issues. As if my concern for his welfare was a mental health problem that needed professional treatment. My private investigator, Ray Sullivan, continued gathering evidence throughout this period. What he discovered painted an even darker picture of Amanda's methods. She had been systematically isolating Michael from anyone who might influence him against her. "She's got him convinced that his college friends are jealous of his success," Ray reported during one of our weekly meetings. "He's dropped contact with everyone who knew him before her. She's even suggested he limit contact with his employees because they don't understand his new social responsibilities." The isolation was textbook manipulation. Remove the target from their support system, then become their only source of validation and guidance. I had seen similar patterns in business when unscrupulous competitors tried to poach talented employees. Ray's investigation had also uncovered Amanda's current husband, David Chen, who was very much alive and completely unaware that his wife was planning to commit bigamy. "He thinks she's on an extended business trip in Connecticut," Ray explained. "She's been telling him she's working as a consultant for wealthy families interested in art acquisition." The depth of her deception was staggering. She was living 2 completely separate lives, maintaining relationships with 2 different men who each believed they were her only romantic partner. The level of organization required to sustain such elaborate lies suggested this wasn't her first time orchestrating such schemes. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery was Amanda's backup plan. Ray had found evidence that she was already positioning herself for the eventual divorce, documenting every aspect of her lifestyle with Michael as evidence of the standard of living she would be entitled to maintain. "She's been taking photos of every dinner, every vacation, every piece of jewelry he buys her." Ray showed me her social media accounts, carefully curated to demonstrate a life of luxury. "She's building a case for alimony that would bankrupt him." The trust fund I had established for Michael contained $2.3 million, money I had saved and invested over 30 years. If Amanda's plan succeeded, she would walk away with half of that, plus ongoing support payments that could continue for decades. But money wasn't really my primary concern. I had rebuilt my wealth once. I could do it again if necessary. What terrified me was the psychological damage Amanda was inflicting on my son. She was systematically destroying his confidence in his own judgment, making him dependent on her approval for every decision. Michael used to call me 3 times a week. I confided to Ray during one of our meetings. Now I'm lucky if I hear from him once a month, and when I do, it's always about wedding details that Amanda wants to discuss. She's rewriting his reality, Ray replied, making him believe that his life before her was somehow inadequate. It's a form of gaslighting that can take years to recover from, even after the truth comes out. The realization that my son might suffer long-term psychological damage gave my mission new urgency. This wasn't just about protecting his money. It was about saving his ability to trust his own instincts and form genuine relationships in the future. I began documenting everything myself, keeping detailed records of every interaction with Amanda, every change in Michael's behavior, every red flag that emerged. If I was going to expose her at the wedding, I needed evidence that was so overwhelming that even her manipulative explanations couldn't cast doubt on the truth. The bachelor party was my last real opportunity to reach Michael before the wedding. I offered to host it, thinking I could create an environment where his old friends might remind him of who he used to be. But Amanda had other plans. "Dad, we've decided to do something more sophisticated," Michael told me. "Amanda's arranged for us to spend a weekend in the Hamptons with some of her friends' husbands. You know, network with people who move in our new social circles. The son I had raised to value character over connections was now prioritizing networking over genuine friendship. The weekend in the Hamptons was everything I had expected it to be. Michael returned with stories about yacht parties and private clubs, speaking in the affected tone of someone trying to belong to a world that would never truly accept him. "These guys really understand business," he told me enthusiastically. "They're working on deals worth hundreds of millions. Amanda says being around successful people will inspire me to reach the next level." What Amanda was really doing was surrounding him with people who would validate her lifestyle expectations, while making him feel inadequate about his own achievements. It was psychological manipulation disguised as social advancement. 2 weeks before the wedding, I made one final attempt to save my son. I called him and asked if we could have lunch together, just the two of us, at the diner where Sarah used to work. It was a place full of memories of our family's real history, before Amanda had rewritten our story. "Dad, I really don't have time," he said. "Amanda and I have final dress fittings and menu tastings, plus she thinks it's important that I limit our one-on-one time until after the wedding. Why would she think that? She says you've been putting pressure on me to doubt her, and she wants me to have a clear head for our big day. After we're married and settled, we can work on rebuilding our relationship." Rebuilding our relationship. As if the problem was our relationship rather than her manipulation of it. That conversation convinced me that Michael was too deeply under Amanda's influence to listen to reason. She had created a reality where any opposition to her was evidence of malicious intent, and any attempt to show him the truth would only strengthen her narrative about my supposed jealousy and control. But I wasn't ready to give up. If Michael wouldn't listen to private warnings, maybe he would pay attention to public revelation. The wedding would be her moment of triumph, the culmination of 2 years of careful planning and manipulation. It would also be her downfall. I spent the final week before the wedding preparing my own presentation. I organized every piece of evidence Ray had gathered, created a timeline of Amanda's deceptions, and prepared copies of the most damning documents. If she wanted to make a public spectacle of her victory, I would give the guests a different kind of show. The morning of the wedding, I put on my best suit and picked up the briefcase that contained Amanda's real story. As I drove to the Riverside Country Club, the venue I had renovated with my own hands 15 years earlier, I thought about Sarah's final words to me. "Promise me you'll protect Michael from people who only see dollar signs when they look at him." Today, I would keep that promise. The morning of October 15th, 2022, dawned grey and overcast, as if nature itself was warning of the storm to come. I stood in my bedroom, looking at myself in the mirror as I adjusted the tie Sarah had given me for our 30th wedding anniversary. The navy blue suit felt heavier than usual, weighted with the responsibility of what I was about to do. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, this is the perfect moment. What's about to unfold will show you how preparation and patience can turn the tables on even the most sophisticated deception. The briefcase sat on my kitchen table, filled with evidence that could destroy a woman's carefully constructed facade. Ray Sullivan had delivered the final pieces of documentation the night before, including proof of Amanda's current marriage and bank records showing suspicious transfers from her previous relationships. "You sure about this, Richard?" Ray had asked as he handed me the folder. "Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back." I was sure. My son was about to commit legal bigamy with a woman who had already begun planning his financial destruction. If I stayed silent, I would be complicit in his ruin. The drive to the Riverside Country Club took me through neighborhoods I had helped build, past houses where my crews had installed kitchens and bedrooms for families just starting their lives together. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was about to prevent my own son from making what he believed was the same kind of hopeful beginning. I arrived at the club early, wanting to walk through the venue one more time before the guests arrived. The ballroom looked magnificent, decorated in Amanda's preferred palette of white and gold. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables set with china and silverware that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Beautiful work." "Mr. Matthews," said Elena, the event coordinator, "Ms. Blackwood has exquisite taste." "Yes," I replied, thinking about the real Amanda Blake and her talent for creating beautiful illusions. She certainly knows how to make an impression. The first guests began arriving at 4 p.m. for the 6 p.m. ceremony. I positioned myself near the entrance, watching Amanda's carefully curated social circle file into the room. Many faces I recognized. From the engagement party, people who had accepted her fabricated identity without question because it fit their expectations of who belonged in their world. Charles and Patricia Blackwood, the actors Amanda had hired to play her parents, arrived, in a black Mercedes, playing their roles with convincing authority. I watched them greet other guests with the practiced ease of people who had spent their lives in high society, never imagining that their entire existence was a performance. Michael looked handsome in his tuxedo, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept checking his watch and scanning the room. The pressure to impress Amanda's family and friends was weighing on him, transforming what should have been a celebration into a test he was desperate to pass. "Dad," he called when he spotted me. "I was starting to worry you might not come." The comment stung because it revealed how much distance had grown between us. There was a time when Michael would never have doubted my presence at the most important moment of his life. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, son," I replied, embracing him. For a moment, he felt like the boy I had raised, and I wondered if I was making a terrible mistake. But then I saw Amanda approaching, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white banner of conquest. "Richard," she said, her voice carrying that familiar note of condescension disguised as warmth. "I'm so glad you decided to join us. I know this hasn't been easy for you." Decided to join us, as if attending my own son's wedding was a generous concession rather than a father's right. "You look beautiful, Amanda," I said, and meant it. She was stunning in her designer gown, every detail perfect from her professionally styled hair to her diamond jewelry. The tragedy was that all of it was built on lies. "Thank you," she replied, then leaned closer as if sharing a confidence. "I hope we can put our differences behind us after today. Family is so important, don't you think?" Family, the word was, a bitter coming from someone who was about to destroy mine. The ceremony itself was flawless, conducted by a minister who spoke eloquently about love, trust, and commitment. I sat in the front row, watching my son pledge his life to a woman whose real name he didn't even know. When the minister asked if anyone had objections to the union, I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. For a moment, I considered standing up. The evidence in my briefcase could stop this farce before it became legally binding. But Michael's face, radiant with what he believed was love, held me in my seat. He deserved to understand the truth before I destroyed his world. The reception began with cocktails on the terrace, guests mingling and congratulating the happy couple. I watched Amanda work the room with the skill of a professional politician, collecting compliments and reinforcing her fictional biography with anyone who would listen. Amanda's father was telling me about his textile business. I overheard one guest say to another, "Fascinating how he's managed to stay competitive with overseas manufacturing." Charles Blackwood nodded sagely, probably improvising details about an industry he knew nothing about. The depth of the deception was remarkable in its audacity. During dinner, I found myself seated at a table with Michael's former colleagues from his investment firm, people who had known him before Amanda's influence. Their conversations revealed how much he had changed. Michael used to be so down to earth, one woman whispered to her husband. Now he name-drops celebrities and talks about wine collections like he's some kind of connoisseur. Amanda's certainly sophisticated, her husband replied diplomatically. I watched my son throughout the meal, noting how he deferred to Amanda on every topic, how he had adopted her opinions as his own. The independent thinker who had challenged me on everything from politics to business strategy had become an echo of his wife's voice. The trouble began during the toasts. Michael's best man from college, Tom Bradley, had prepared remarks that referenced their shared history and the values Michael had once held dear. But as Tom spoke about integrity and staying true to yourself, I saw Amanda's expression darken. "Thank you, Tom," she interrupted before he could finish. "That was nostalgic. But tonight is about our future, not the past." The dismissal was subtle but clear. Amanda was literally cutting ties with Michael's history, erasing the relationships and experiences that had shaped him into the man she claimed to love. That's when I realized the full scope of her plan. She wasn't just stealing Michael's money. She was stealing his identity, replacing everything authentic about him with a version that served her purposes. The breaking point came during the dancing. I had asked for one dance with the bride, a traditional gesture between father-in-law and daughter-in-law. But as we moved across the floor, Amanda's mask slipped completely. "You know, Richard," she said quietly, her voice cold despite her smile, "you really should consider retiring soon. Michael and I have been discussing it, and we think you've worked long enough. Time to step back and let the younger generation take over." Take over. She was already planning to seize control of my company, the business I had built with 40 years of sweat and sacrifice. "Is that what Michael wants?" I asked. "Michael wants what's best for our family," she replied, "and what's best is for you to stop interfering in our decisions. You've had your time, Richard. Now it's ours." Her arrogance was breathtaking. She spoke as if my son's success was her achievement, as if the wealth he had inherited from my work was rightfully hers to control. "You're making a mistake, Amanda," I said quietly. "The only mistake here is yours," she hissed, her grip tightening on my shoulder. "You think you can intimidate me with your working-class moralizing? I know exactly what you are, Richard. You're a man who can't accept that your son has outgrown you." The song ended, and Amanda stepped away with her practiced smile restored. But I had seen her true face, the calculating predator beneath the beautiful exterior. As I walked back to my table, I noticed Michael watching us with concern. Amanda immediately went to him, whispering in his ear with the urgent intensity of someone reporting a threat. I saw his expression change, saw the doubt and anger replace the joy that should have filled his wedding day. Within minutes, Michael was striding toward me, his face flushed with anger. "Dad, we need to talk. Now." He led me to a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the other guests, but still visible to anyone who cared to watch our confrontation. "Amanda told me what you said to her during your dance," he began, his voice tight with controlled fury. "She said you threatened her." "I did no such thing, Michael. She said you told her she was making a mistake, that you'd make sure she regretted marrying me. Dad, how could you do this on my wedding day?" The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Amanda had twisted my warning into a threat, had used our private conversation to further poison my son against me. "Michael, you need to listen to me," I said, pulling the briefcase closer. "There are things about Amanda you don't know." "I know. Everything I need to know," he replied. "I know she makes me happy. I know she believes in my potential. And I know you can't stand that I've found someone who supports my dreams instead of trying to control them." "Son, please, just look at this." "Evidence! Evidence!" His voice rose loud enough that nearby guests turned to stare. "You've been investigating my wife. Dad, that's not normal behavior. That's obsessive and controlling, and frankly, it's disturbing." The word disturbing carried across the ballroom like a thunderclap. Conversations stopped, heads turned. The carefully orchestrated celebration was becoming a public spectacle, exactly what Amanda had intended. "Michael, I'm trying to protect you," I said desperately. "From what? From happiness? From success? From a woman who actually appreciates what I've accomplished?" His voice cracked with emotion. "Dad, you've spent your whole life building things, but you're about to tear down the most important thing I've ever built." Amanda appeared beside him, her face a mask of wounded innocence. "Richard, please," she said, her voice carrying just the right note of pained disappointment. "This is our wedding day. Can't we at least pretend to be a family? Pretend to be a family." The choice of words was perfect, designed to suggest that I was the one being fake while positioning herself as the victim trying to maintain peace. "You die. Want to see disturbing behavior?" I said, my patience finally exhausted. "Let me show you what real deception looks like." I opened my briefcase and pulled out the first photograph, a wedding picture of Amanda Blake and David Chen, dated 18 months earlier. "Your wife is already married, Michael. Her real name is Amanda Blake, and she's been living a completely fabricated life." The photograph fluttered to the floor between us, and for a moment time seemed suspended. Michael stared at the image, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. But Amanda was faster. "That's not me," she said immediately, her voice steady and convincing. "Richard, I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but this is someone else's photograph. Look at it, Michael," I urged. "Look at her face." "This is insane," Amanda said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Richard has been harassing me for months, and now he's resorted to forging documents to try to destroy our marriage." The tears were perfect, just enough to suggest genuine distress without ruining her makeup. Even knowing what I knew about her, I had to admire the performance. "Dad," Michael said, his voice hollow with disappointment, "how could you do this? How could you stoop so low?" That's when I realized that Amanda had prepared for this moment. She had anticipated that someone might eventually discover her true identity, and she had already positioned herself as the victim of a smear campaign. Every emotion, every response, every tear was calculated to maintain her narrative while destroying mine. The guests were no longer pretending not to watch. The entire ballroom had become an audience for our family's destruction, and Amanda was giving the performance of her life. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the room, "I apologize for this disruption. My father-in-law has been struggling with our marriage, and tonight his behavior has become inappropriate and hurtful. Father-in-law, she was claiming ownership of the relationship even as she destroyed it. These accusations are based on doctored photographs and conspiracy theories, she continued. I had hoped we could work through our differences privately, but Richard seems determined to ruin this beautiful evening. The crowd murmured sympathetically, their opinion clearly swayed by Amanda's graceful handling of my attack. I looked around the room at faces that had known me for decades, people who had trusted Matthew's construction with their homes and businesses, and saw doubt in their eyes. Amanda had won. In the court of public opinion, I was the unstable father who couldn't accept his son's happiness. She was the gracious bride, trying to maintain dignity in the face of family dysfunction. But I wasn't finished, not even close. The silence that followed Amanda's performance was deafening. 200 guests stared at me with expressions ranging from pity to disgust, as if they were witnessing a man's complete mental breakdown. The woman who had just committed bigamy in front of them was being consoled by my own son, while I stood alone with evidence that suddenly seemed worthless. But 40 years of building a business had taught me that sometimes you have to absorb a devastating blow before you can deliver the knockout punch. Amanda thought she had neutralized my threat by discrediting me in front of the witnesses. She was about to learn that a cornered father is far more dangerous than she had calculated. You're right, Amanda, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. This is your wedding day, and you deserve to have everyone's complete attention. The unexpected concession confused her. Her tears stopped flowing as she tried to read my expression, searching for the trap she sensed but couldn't identify. Michael, I continued, your wife is absolutely correct that this is about family. So let me share some family history with everyone who's come to celebrate with you tonight. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a portable projector, the kind I used for construction presentations. This will just take a moment to set up. Dad, what are you doing? Michael asked, his voice tight with alarm. I'm giving Amanda exactly what she wants, I replied, connecting the projector to my laptop. A chance to tell her real story to everyone who matters to her. Amanda's face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. She whispered something urgent to Michael, probably suggesting that they stop me, but it was too late. The projection screen descended from the ceiling, and suddenly I had everyone's undivided attention. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, since my son has accused me of fabricating evidence, I thought you might like to see the original sources of my information. The first image that appeared on the screen was a marriage certificate from Las Vegas, Nevada. Amanda Blake and David Chen married 18 months ago. The document was large enough for everyone in the room to read clearly. This is the original marriage license, I explained conversationally, filed with the Clark County Clerk's office in Nevada. You can verify its authenticity by calling them directly if you'd like. Amanda started to speak, but I held up my hand. Please, let me finish the presentation. I think everyone deserves to see the complete picture. The next slide showed Amanda's driver's license, issued to Amanda Blake with an address in Albany, New York. Then came her high school graduation photo, clearly the same woman, but wearing a different name. Amanda Blake, I continued, graduated from Albany High School in 2010. No record of attendance at Wellesley College under either name, no record of employment in art curation. In fact, no record of the Blackwood family existing anywhere in Connecticut genealogical records. I looked directly at Charles and Patricia Blackwood, who were beginning to edge toward the exit. Although I'm sure our hired actors could tell us more about their theatrical backgrounds if we asked nicely. The room erupted in whispers as guests began to understand the scope of the deception, but I wasn't finished. David Chen, I said, as a new photo appeared on the screen, currently resides in Las Vegas, where he believes his wife Amanda is on an extended business trip in Connecticut. He has no idea she's been planning to commit bigamy tonight. Michael's face had gone completely white. He turned to Amanda, searching her expression for some explanation that would make sense of what he was seeing. "This is all fabricated," Amanda said desperately. "He's doctored these documents to destroy our marriage. Can't you see what he's doing?" But her protest sounded weak against the mounting evidence. I had learned from her mistake. Instead of making accusations, I was simply presenting facts and letting the audience draw their own conclusions. "Bank records," I announced, as financial documents filled the screen, showing transfers from joint accounts belonging to Amanda Blake and 3 different men over the past 5 years. Total amount diverted, $347,000. The numbers told the story more clearly than any words could. Amanda Blake was a professional relationship fraud, someone who systematically targeted wealthy men for financial gain. Boston Police Department report, I continued, filed by real estate developer Marcus Thompson after discovering $200,000 missing from accounts he shared with a woman calling herself Amanda Blackwood. The same pattern, the same name, the same methodology. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "Michael," Amanda said, her voice breaking, "you have to believe me. Your father is mentally ill. He's been stalking me, harassing me, creating this elaborate fiction because he can't stand to see you happy." But Michael was staring at the projection screen, seeing his wife's real face for the first time. "The engagement party," he said slowly. "Your parents' house? How did you—" "I rented it," I answered for her. $20,000 for the weekend, including the furniture and staff, all paid for with money she had taken from her previous victims. The revelation hit Michael like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his hand reaching for a chair to steady himself. "Amanda, tell me this isn't true." For a moment her composure cracked completely. The mask of innocent victim slipped, revealing the calculating predator beneath. "Michael, I can explain everything. Yes, some of the details about my background aren't exactly accurate, but my feelings for you are real. Some of the details." She was still minimizing, still trying to control the narrative, even as it collapsed around her. "Which feelings?" I asked, advancing to the next slide. "The ones you described to David Chen in this email sent 3 days ago?" The email appeared on the screen, Amanda's words displayed for everyone to read. "David, the Connecticut project is almost complete. 1 more week, and I'll have enough to pay off all our debts and start fresh somewhere new. This guy is even more gullible than the Boston Mark. Love you, can't wait to come home. The Connecticut project, the Boston Mark." My son's life reduced to criminal terminology in his wife's correspondence with her real husband. Michael's legs gave out completely, and he sank into the nearest chair. The man who had accused me of jealousy and mental illness was finally seeing the truth about the woman he had just married. "Why?" he whispered, the question directed at Amanda but carrying across the silent ballroom. "Michael, She started, but her explanation was interrupted by the sound of sirens outside. I checked my watch. "Right on time," I said. "I called the police an hour ago to report a bigamy in progress. They should be here momentarily to arrest the bride." Amanda's eyes went wide with panic. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely afraid. "You can't do this to me," she said, the victim persona finally abandoned completely. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually," I replied, "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A career criminal who preys on good men and destroys families for profit. But there's one thing you never understood about the man you tried to destroy." The police entered the ballroom just as I advanced to my final slide. It was a photograph of Amanda being arrested in Miami 2 years earlier, using the name Amanda Sterling in another relationship fraud case. "A father's love," I concluded. is the most dangerous force in the world when his child is threatened. And you, Amanda Blake, made the mistake of threatening mine. As the officers approached, Amanda made one final attempt to salvage the situation. "Michael," she pleaded, "don't let them do this to us. We can fight this together. We can prove your father is lying." But Michael was staring at the evidence on the screen, his face a mask of devastation and dawning understanding. "Everything," he said quietly. "Everything was a lie." "Not everything," Amanda insisted. "My feelings for you were calculated to maximize financial gain," I finished, "according to your own emails, which are now evidence in a federal fraud investigation." The handcuffs clicked around Amanda's wrists as the officers read her rights. She was no longer the elegant bride who had charmed a ballroom full of Connecticut's elite. She was a criminal being arrested for bigamy, fraud, and theft. As they led her away, she turned back one final time. "This isn't over, Richard," she called. "You think you've won, but you've destroyed your own son in the process." Her words carried a chilling truth. I had saved Michael from financial ruin and legal complications, but I had also shattered his world in the most public way possible. As the ballroom slowly emptied, guests whispering among themselves about the spectacular scandal they had witnessed, I found myself alone with my son. Michael sat in his tuxedo, surrounded by the remnants of his destroyed wedding, looking like a man who had lost everything he thought he wanted. The victory I had planned felt hollow in the face of his devastation. "Dad," he said finally, his voice broken. "How long have you known?" 6 months, I admitted. "I tried to tell you, but I wouldn't listen." He looked up at me with eyes full of pain and regret. "God, Dad, what have I done?" That's when I realized the true test wasn't exposing Amanda. It was what happened next. How do you rebuild a relationship with someone whose life you've just saved by destroying everything they thought they wanted? The answer would determine whether I had truly protected my son or simply replaced one kind of damage with another. The Riverside Country Club had never felt so empty. Staff members moved quietly around us, clearing tables and removing decorations. From what was supposed to be the happiest day of my son's life, Michael sat motionless in his tuxedo, staring at the projection screen that still displayed evidence of his wife's betrayal. I dismissed the technical crew and packed away my equipment, unsure of what to say to the man I had just saved from destruction. Part of me expected him to be grateful. Another part feared he would never forgive me for the public humiliation he had endured. "The honeymoon was supposed to be 3 weeks in Tuscany," Michael said suddenly, his voice hollow. "She picked out every restaurant, every hotel, every experience we were going to share." He laughed bitterly. "I guess she was planning to milk those memories for maximum alimony value." "Michael." "No, Dad, let me talk." He stood up slowly, like a man twice his age. "I need to understand how I could be so blind. I'm supposed to be intelligent. I make investment decisions involving millions of dollars. How did I fall for such an obvious con?" I wanted to tell him that love makes fools of the wisest men, that Amanda was a professional who had perfected her craft over years of practice. But platitudes wouldn't heal the damage to his self-respect. "She was very good at what she did," I said simply, "and she told you exactly what you wanted to hear." "What I wanted to hear," he repeated. "That I was sophisticated enough for her world, that I deserved luxury and status symbols." He looked around the empty ballroom. "God, Dad, she turned me into someone I don't recognize." That admission gave me hope. The Michael I had raised was still there, buried beneath layers of manipulation and false aspirations. "The Michael I know," I said carefully, "is someone who builds value through honest work, someone who measures success by the families he can support, not the connections he can impress." that Michael seems pretty naive right now. That Michael saw through Amanda's deception eventually. Even tonight, before I showed the evidence, I could see doubt in your eyes. He considered this, then shook his head. I was going to ignore the doubt. She had me convinced that questioning her was a character flaw on my part. The sophistication of Amanda's psychological manipulation was becoming clearer as Michael processed what had happened to him. She hadn't just stolen his money, she had undermined his confidence in his own judgment. Son, I need you to know something, I said. Every decision I made over the past 6 months was about protecting you. I never wanted to hurt you. I know that now. He met my eyes for the first time since Amanda's arrest. But Dad, the way you did it, destroying my wedding in front of everyone I work with, everyone who respected me, would you have listened if I had approached you privately again? The question hung between us like a bridge neither of us wanted to cross. We both knew the answer. She had me convinced you were the problem, Michael admitted. Every time you tried to warn me, she reframed it as evidence of your controlling nature. I thought I was protecting our marriage by keeping you at distance. That was her strategy. Isolate you from anyone who might expose her lies. The worst part, Michael continued, is that I actually started to believe her version of you. The man who gave me everything, who worked 16-hour days to pay for my education, who never asked for anything in return. She convinced me that you were selfish and jealous. The pain in his voice was harder to bear than his earlier anger. Amanda had done more than steal money. She had poisoned the relationship between a father and son. We can rebuild what she damaged, I said. But only if you want to, Michael nodded slowly. I want to, Dad. But I don't know how to trust my own judgment anymore. If I could be so wrong about Amanda, how can I trust myself about anything? Before I could answer, Elena, the event coordinator, approached us hesitantly. Mr. Matthews, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have some practical matters to address. The practical matters were staggering. The wedding had cost $180,000, most of it paid by Michael, but some expenses covered by my own contribution. The honeymoon in Tuscany was non-refundable. The apartment Michael and Amanda had been sharing would need to be sorted out, though she would obviously not be returning there. Sir, Eleanor continued, there's also the matter of the gifts. Many guests left envelopes and packages. What would you like us to do with them? Wedding gifts for a marriage that had lasted exactly 4 hours before the bride was arrested. The absurdity of the situation would have been funny if it weren't so devastating. Return them, Michael said wearily. Send them back to everyone with an apology for the unusual circumstances. As Eleanor walked away to coordinate the cleanup, Michael turned to me with a question I had been dreading. Dad, how much money did I actually lose? Not just the wedding costs, but everything she took from our accounts. I had reviewed the financial damage with Ray Sullivan that morning. The total was breathtaking. She transferred $247,000 from your accounts over the past 8 months, I said gently. Most of it went to pay debts she had accumulated from previous relationships. The engagement ring alone cost $85,000. Michael's face went pale. That's most of my savings. It's also recoverable, I assured him. The police have frozen her accounts, and restitution will be part of any plea agreement. You'll get most of it back eventually, but not immediately. He ran his hands through his hair. Dad, I don't think I can afford the apartment without her income. And my colleagues at the firm. After tonight, I don't know if I can face them. The full scope of Amanda's destruction was becoming clear. She hadn't just taken his money. She had undermined his professional relationships and social standing. The humiliation of tonight's revelation would follow him for years. You could come home, I suggested quietly. Take some time to figure out your next steps. Home, He said the word like he was testing its meaning. "Dad, I haven't thought of your house as home for years. Amanda convinced me that moving back would be regression." Amanda convinced you of a lot of things that weren't true. For the first time. That evening, Michael smiled, a sad, broken smile, but genuine. "You know what the strangest part is? I actually feel relieved. For months, I've been exhausted trying to keep up with her expectations, trying to become the man she wanted me to be. It was like wearing a costume that never quite fit." That admission revealed the psychological toll Amanda's manipulation had taken. She had been systematically erasing his authentic self, replacing it with a version that served her purposes. "The man you are," I said, "is enough. It's always been enough." "Is it?" Michael looked around the empty ballroom. "Because tonight I feel like the biggest fool in Connecticut. Tonight, you look like a man who learned an expensive lesson before it cost him everything." We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, father and son processing the wreckage of what was supposed to be a celebration. Outside, the October wind rattled the windows, carrying the promise of winter and the possibility of new beginnings. "Dad," Michael said finally, "I owe you an apology. Not just for tonight, but for the past 2 years. I let her convince me that your concerns came from weakness rather than love. You don't owe me anything, son. You were targeted by a professional manipulator. The fact that you fell for her act doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But I hurt you. I said terrible things, questioned your motives, chose her over the man who sacrificed everything for my future." The pain in his voice was raw and honest. I realized that part of Amanda's lasting damage would be the guilt Michael felt about his own behavior during their relationship. "Michael, look at me," I said, waiting until his eyes met mine. "Love isn't something you can use up or wear out. What happened between us doesn't change how I feel about you. How can you say that after everything I put you through? Because that's what fathers do. We love our children through their mistakes, especially the ones that teach them who they really are." For a moment, I saw the boy who used to follow me around construction sites, eager to learn and proud to be my son. That boy was still there, beneath the sophisticated facade Amanda had helped him construct. "I want to come home, Dad," he said quietly, "at least until I figure out who I am without her influence." "Your room is exactly the way you left it," I replied. "It's been waiting for you." As we walked toward the exit, Michael paused to look back at the ballroom one final time. "Dad, can I ask you something? Anything? When you were standing up there exposing Amanda, knowing everyone thought you were crazy, knowing I might never forgive you, weren't you scared?" I thought about Sarah's final words, about the promise I had made to protect our son from people who saw only dollar signs when they looked at him. Terrified, I admitted, but not of losing their respect or your anger. I was scared of what would happen if I did nothing. And now I'm proud of both of us. You for being strong enough to face the truth, and me for being brave enough to tell it. We walked out of the Riverside Country Club together, leaving behind the remnants of Amanda's carefully constructed lies. The real work, rebuilding trust and healing the wounds she had inflicted, would begin tomorrow. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, I had my son back. 3 weeks after the wedding that never was, Michael sat across from me at our kitchen table, the same one where I had helped him with algebra homework 20 years earlier. The morning sun streamed through windows I had installed with my own hands, casting warm light over financial documents that told the story of Amanda's systematic theft. The FBI recovered $189,000 from her accounts, Michael said, reviewing the latest report from the federal prosecutor's office. She had already spent the rest on paying debts to previous victims and maintaining her false identity. The federal case against Amanda Blake had expanded beyond bigamy to include wire fraud, identity theft, and racketeering. She was part of a larger network of relationship fraudsters who shared information about potential targets and techniques for maximizing financial gain. "At least you'll get most of your money back," I said, pouring coffee into the mug Michael had used since high school. "But more importantly, you stopped her before she could access your trust fund." That had been Amanda's endgame, positioning herself for a divorce settlement that would have entitled her to half of everything Michael would inherit from me. If I had waited even a few more months to expose her, the damage would have been irreversible. "Dad, I need to ask you something," Michael said, setting down the report. "That night at the wedding, you had everything you needed to destroy Amanda. You could have humiliated her completely, ruined her in front of everyone she was trying to impress." He paused. "But you didn't. Even after everything she put you through, you focused on the facts and let them speak for themselves. Why?" It was a question I had been expecting. The truth was that my initial plan had been much more vindictive. I had wanted to see Amanda suffer the way she had made my family suffer, because destroying her wouldn't have helped you heal, I replied. Revenge might have felt good in the moment, but it wouldn't have rebuilt what she damaged between us. You were protecting me even then. I was trying to save your character as much as your bank account. If I had turned you into someone who enjoyed watching others suffer, Amanda would have won in the end. This conversation had become a pattern over the past 3 weeks. Michael was systematically examining every aspect of his relationship with Amanda, trying to understand how he had been manipulated and how to avoid similar situations in the future. The process was painful but necessary. Amanda had been more than a financial threat. She had been a psychological virus, infecting Michael's judgment and self-perception in ways that would take time to heal. "I've been thinking about going back to work," Michael said. "The firm has been understanding about everything, but I can't hide here forever." "How do you feel about facing your colleagues?" "Embarrassed," he admitted, "but also enlightened, I guess. Some of the people I thought were friends disappeared completely after the wedding scandal. Others, like Tom Bradley, have been calling every day to check on me." Tom Bradley, his college roommate and best man, had been one of the few people to see through Amanda's act from the beginning. But Michael had dismissed his concerns as jealousy, another example of how Amanda had isolated him from genuine friends. "Real friends," I observed, "are the ones who stay when your world falls apart, like you did." The simple acknowledgement carried more weight than any elaborate apology. We were learning to communicate honestly again, without the filter of Amanda's manipulation affecting our conversations. "There's something else I want to discuss," Michael continued. "I've been thinking about the business. For 2 years, Amanda had discouraged any involvement between Michael and Matthew's construction. She had convinced him that working with his father would limit his potential and damage his sophisticated image. What about the business? I'd like to learn it, really learn it, not just the financial side, but the actual construction. I want to understand what you built and how you built." The request surprised me. Michael had shown little interest in construction since his teenage years, preferring the clean abstraction of financial markets to the messy reality of building trades. "That would mean starting at the bottom," I warned him. "Learning to read blueprints, understanding materials, working alongside crews who've been doing this longer than you've been alive." "Good," he said firmly. "I need to reconnect with work that has real meaning, that creates something tangible. Amanda had me chasing status symbols and social connections. I want to build something that lasts." This was the Michael I remembered, someone who found satisfaction in meaningful work rather than empty prestige. Amanda's influence was fading, allowing his authentic self to resurface. "When do you want to start?" "Monday, if you'll have me." I reached across the table and shook his hand, the same formal gesture I used with all new employees. "Welcome to Matthew's Construction, Michael. Fair warning, I'm a demanding boss." I wouldn't expect anything less. That afternoon, We drove to the current job site, a custom home in West Hartford for a family with 3 young children. Michael had never seen one of my projects during the construction phase, and I watched his face as he absorbed the complexity of coordinating dozens of trades and hundreds of decisions. Every choice matters, I explained as we walked through the framed structure. The quality of materials, the precision of measurements, the craftsmanship of installation. Cut corners on any one element and the entire project suffers. Like relationships, Michael said quietly. Exactly like relationships. You can't build something lasting on a foundation of lies and shortcuts. We spent 2 hours on the site, and I could see Michael's analytical mind engaging with the problems of construction management. He asked intelligent questions about scheduling, material costs, and quality control that showed his business education could translate into practical applications. "Dad," he said as we drove home, "I have a confession. Part of me always envied what you built here. Not just the financial success, but the respect you earned from clients and workers. When Amanda came along, she convinced me that envying your achievements meant I was settling for less than I deserved. And now I realize that what I envied wasn't something to surpass. It was something to learn from and hopefully earn myself." The drive home took us through neighborhoods where Matthew's construction had left its mark over 4 decades. Houses where families had grown up, office buildings where people built careers, renovations that had transformed dreams into reality. Each project represented relationships built on trust and work completed with integrity. "You know what, Amanda? Never understood," Michael continued. "She thought your success was just about money. She never realized that the real achievement was building something that mattered to people. Money is just a byproduct," I agreed. "The real satisfaction comes from solving problems and creating value." She spent so much energy trying to separate me from those values, making me believe that physical work was beneath someone with my education, that success meant distancing myself from my origins rather than building on them. We pulled into our driveway just as my phone rang. Ray Sullivan, my private investigator, with an update on Amanda's case. "Richard, you're going to want to hear this," Ray said. "Amanda just agreed to a plea deal. She's cooperating with the FBI to expose the entire fraud network she was part of. What does that mean for Michael? Full restitution within 6 months, and she'll be testifying against at least 8 other people involved in similar schemes. Turns out she was small time compared to some of these operators." After I hung up, Michael looked thoughtful. "Dad, can I ask you something that might sound strange?" "Go ahead." "Do you think Amanda ever actually cared about me, even a little? Or was it all completely calculated?" The question revealed how deeply her betrayal had shaken his ability to trust his own perceptions. He needed to understand whether any part of their relationship had been genuine. "I think Amanda is capable of affection," I said carefully. "But I also think she's incapable of putting anyone else's welfare ahead of her own. She might have enjoyed your company, but she never loved you enough to be honest with you." That's what I figured. But part of me hoped. He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. "Actually, it doesn't matter. What matters is that I learned something important about the difference between manipulation and genuine care. Which is, people who really care about you tell you the truth, even when it's painful. People who are using you tell you what you want to hear." That evening, we had dinner with Tom Bradley and his wife Sarah, the first social gathering Michael had attended since the wedding disaster. I watched him navigate the conversation with growing confidence, no longer trying to impress anyone with sophisticated opinions or expensive references. "You seem different," Tom observed, "more like the guy I knew in college." "I feel like I'm remembering who I used to be," Michael replied, "before I started trying to become someone else." "Amanda really did a number on you, didn't she? She convinced me that everything authentic about me was inadequate." My family, my values, my interests. She made me believe I needed to reinvent myself to be worthy of success. Sarah Bradley, a psychiatrist, leaned forward with professional interest. That's classic emotional abuse, undermining someone's self-worth, to make them dependent on your approval. The crazy thing is, I was successful before I met her. I had a good job, solid relationships, clear goals. But she made me feel like none of that mattered unless it impressed the right people. And now, Michael looked at me before answering. Now I'm learning that the right people are the ones who valued me before I had anything to prove. The conversation continued late into the evening, covering everything from Michael's plans for learning the construction business to his thoughts about relationships and success. For the first time in 2 years, I watched my son engage with friends as his authentic self, rather than as the character Amanda had helped him create. Driving home, Michael was quiet for several minutes before speaking. "Dad, I have something I need to tell you." "What's that?" "The night before the wedding, I had doubts, serious doubts. I almost called you to ask if we could talk." "What stopped you?" "Amanda. She said that pre-wedding nerves were normal and that calling you would just give you another opportunity to undermine our relationship. She convinced me that having doubts meant I was weak, not that I was listening to my instincts." The revelation was both heartbreaking and encouraging. Heartbreaking because it showed how close we had come to avoiding the entire disaster. Encouraging because it proved that Michael's judgment hadn't been completely compromised. "Your instincts were working," I said. "Amanda just taught you to ignore them. I'll never make that mistake again. From now on, when something feels wrong, I'm going to trust that feeling instead of explaining it away." That's the most important lesson you could learn from this experience. As we pulled into our driveway, Michael turned to me with a question that had obviously been weighing on his mind. "Dad, do you think I'll ever be able to trust someone enough to get married again? Not soon, obviously, but someday. I think you'll be better at choosing the right person because of what you've learned. Amanda taught you to recognize the difference between someone who builds you up and someone who tears you down." "I hope so. I want to find what you and Mom had someday. What your mother and I had was built on complete honesty, even when the truth was difficult. We never tried to impress each other with false versions of ourselves. Amanda and I never had that. Every conversation was performance. Every shared experience was an opportunity for her to gather information or manipulate my emotions. Real love," I said, "feels like coming home to yourself, not like becoming someone else." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Then I guess I know what to look for next time." As we walked toward the house, I realized that Amanda's betrayal, devastating as it had been, might ultimately prove to be a gift. It had taught Michael lessons about authenticity, manipulation, and genuine love that would protect him for the rest of his life. The boy who had once followed me around construction sites, eager to learn and proud to help, was becoming a man who understood the value of honest work and real relationships. Amanda had tried to steal his identity, but in the end, she had helped him find it. Tomorrow, he would start learning the business I had built with 40 years of sweat and integrity. But tonight, I had something even more valuable than a successful company to pass on to him. I had my son back. 6 months after the wedding that exposed Amanda's elaborate deception, I stood on the deck of our latest project, watching Michael direct a crew installing custom cabinetry in what would become a family's dream kitchen. The April morning was crisp and clear, perfect weather for construction work, and my son moved with the confidence of someone who had found his calling. "Check the level on that top cabinet again, Danny," Michael called to one of our senior carpenters. "The homeowner is particular about details, and we want this perfect." Danny Rodriguez, son of my first employee Tom, grinned as he adjusted the cabinet. "Yes, sir, Mr. Matthews. Your dad trained you well. The title still made Michael smile. For 6 months, he had been learning every aspect of the construction business from the ground up. He had spent weeks with each trade, electrical, plumbing, framing, finish work, developing an appreciation for the skill and dedication required to build quality homes. "You know," Michael said, joining me on the deck, "Amanda would have hated this. The early mornings, the physical work, the genuine relationships with working people. She would have seen it all as beneath her social aspirations." "And what do you see?" "Purpose," he said simply. "Every day we solve real problems for real families. Every project creates something that will last for generations." He gestured toward the house taking shape around us. "This isn't just a building. It's where the Morrison kids will grow up, where they'll bring their own children to visit grandparents someday." The transformation, in Michael's perspective, had been remarkable to witness. The man who had once measured success by social connections and luxury purchases now found satisfaction in craftsmanship and community impact. "Mr. Matthews," called Elena Morrison, the homeowner, as she approached with coffee for the crew, "I wanted to thank you both for the beautiful work. My husband and I never imagined we could afford custom-built cabinets, but your payment plan made our dream possible." This was another change Michael had implemented, flexible financing options that allowed working families to afford quality construction. It was profitable for us and life-changing for clients who had previously been priced out of custom work. "Thank you for trusting us with your family's home," Michael replied. "We know how important this project is to you." After Elena left, I noticed Michael checking his watch. "Expecting someone?" "Actually, yes. I have a lunch meeting with someone I want you to meet." "Business or personal?" "Both, potentially. Her name is Jennifer Walsh, and she's a project manager for Habitat for Humanity. I've been volunteering with them on weekends, and we've become friends." The careful way he said "friends" suggested there might be more to the relationship than professional collaboration. This was the first time Michael had mentioned any romantic interest since Amanda's betrayal. "Tell me about her." "She's different from anyone I've ever dated. Real, honest, passionate about helping families achieve homeownership. She grew up in foster care and worked her way through engineering school at UConn." Michael paused. "Dad, she knows about Amanda. I told her the whole story because I needed to be completely honest from the beginning." "How did she react?" "She said that anyone who could learn from that experience and use it to help others was someone worth knowing better." The contrast with Amanda couldn't have been more stark. Where Amanda had encouraged Michael to distance himself from his family and authentic interests, Jennifer seemed to appreciate exactly who he was. "Would you like to join us for lunch?" "I'd value your opinion of her." "Are you sure? I don't want to interfere in your personal life again." Michael laughed. "Dad, you saved my personal life. Your opinion matters to me because you see through people's facades to their real character." We met Jennifer at a small cafe in downtown Hartford, the kind of place that served honest food to working people rather than exotic cuisine to impress social climbers. She was waiting at a corner table, reviewing blueprints for a habitat project, completely absorbed in her work. "Jennifer, I'd like you to meet my father, Richard Matthews." She stood to shake my hand, and I immediately noticed several things about her. Her handshake was firm but not performed. Her clothes were practical rather than fashionable. Her smile was genuine, reaching her eyes in a way that Amanda's never had. "Mr. Matthews, Michael has told me so much about you and your business. I'm honored to meet the man who taught him about building with integrity. Please, call me Richard. Michael tells me you're working with Habitat for Humanity for 3 years now. We're planning a development of 12 affordable homes in East Hartford, and Michael has been helping us design efficient construction processes." Her enthusiasm was infectious. "He's volunteered every Saturday for 2 months, and his insights have been invaluable." "What kind of insights?" scheduling, coordination, material optimization, quality control systems. He's bringing professional construction management to families who could never afford it otherwise. I watched Michael's face as Jennifer spoke, seeing pride and purpose that had been missing during his relationship with Amanda. This woman appreciated his skills and values rather than trying to change them. Michael mentioned you studied engineering at UConn, structural engineering with a focus on affordable housing design. Not glamorous, but it makes a difference in people's lives. What drew you to that field? Jennifer's expression grew thoughtful. I aged out of foster care at 18, with nowhere to live. A Habitat family took me in temporarily, and I saw how home ownership changed everything for them. Stability, community, hope for the future. I wanted to help other families experience that transformation. Her story explained the passion I heard in her voice. Unlike Amanda, who had fabricated hardship for sympathy, Jennifer had overcome real challenges through determination and education. That's remarkably similar to why I started Matthews Construction, I said, building homes for families who deserve security and community. Michael told me about your company's history, starting with nothing and building something that employs dozens of people while serving hundreds of families. That's the kind of impact I hope to achieve someday. Over lunch, I watched the interaction between Michael and Jennifer carefully. They communicated like equals, challenging each other's ideas respectfully, sharing genuine laughter over common experiences. There was no performance, no manipulation, no calculation, just two people who enjoyed each other's company and shared similar values. Jennifer, I said as we finished our meal, would Matthews Construction be able to help with your Habitat project in any way? Actually, Michael interjected, I've been hoping to discuss that with you. What if we provided construction management services pro bono? The experience would be valuable for our crew, and we could help ensure quality construction for the families. That's a significant commitment, I pointed out. 12 homes over 6 months. I know, but Dad, these families work full-time jobs and still can't afford market-rate housing. If we can help them achieve home ownership, we're strengthening the entire community. I looked at my son, remembering the young man who had once prioritized luxury vacations and status symbols. Amanda's influence had temporarily distorted his values. But underneath, the boy I had raised to care about others had survived intact. Let's do it, I decided. Matthews Construction will provide full project management for the Habitat development. Jennifer's face lit up with genuine joy. Richard, this is incredible. You have no idea how much this means to the families. Actually, I think I do. My first home was built by volunteers and donated materials. I know what it means to have people believe in your potential. After lunch, Michael walked Jennifer to her car while I settled the bill. Through the window, I watched them talk earnestly, their body language comfortable and natural. When she hugged him goodbye, it was the embrace of friends who might become something more, not the calculated affection I had witnessed with Amanda. So, Michael said, returning to the table, what do you think? I think she's everything Amanda pretended to be. Intelligent, caring, genuine, and interested in building something meaningful rather than just taking from others. I'm being careful, he said, taking things slowly, making sure I'm seeing her clearly rather than projecting what I want to see. That's wisdom earned through experience. But Dad, I feel something with Jennifer that I never felt with Amanda. Comfort, like I can be completely myself without worrying about her approval or judgment. That's what real love feels like, acceptance rather than performance. I think I'm beginning to understand that. Amanda made me feel like I had to earn her affection every day by becoming someone more impressive. Jennifer makes me feel valued for who I already am. We drove back to the job site together, and I reflected on how much had changed since that terrible night at the Riverside Country Club. Amanda's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been clarifying. Michael had learned to distinguish between authentic relationships and sophisticated manipulation. "Dad," Michael said as we pulled into the construction site, "I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about Amanda lately." My heart clenched. "With worry." "What kind of thinking?" "Not romantic thinking," he assured me quickly, "but I've been wondering if she ever reflects on what she lost when she chose deception over honesty." "What do you mean?" "She could have had a real relationship with someone who genuinely cared about her. Instead, she chose to be a predator. I feel sorry for her in a way." The compassion in his voice was remarkable. Despite everything Amanda had put him through, Michael was capable of empathy for his former tormentor. "She'll spend the next 5 years in federal prison," I said. "That's a long time to think about the choices that led her there. I hope she uses that time to figure out how to build authentic relationships instead of exploiting them." "You're a better man than I am, son. I'm not sure I could find forgiveness for someone who caused that much damage." "I'm not forgiving her. For my sake, Dad. I'm forgiving her for mine. Carrying anger and resentment would just give her continued power over my life." We spent the rest of the afternoon working alongside our crew, solving problems and making progress on the Morrison family's dream home. As the sun set over Hartford, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I realized that Amanda's greatest failure hadn't been getting caught. Her greatest failure had been underestimating the strength of the values she had tried to destroy. Michael's character had been tested by her manipulation, but it had emerged stronger and clearer than before. The boy I had raised to value honesty, hard work, and genuine relationships had survived Amanda's attempt to reprogram him. More than survived. He had been refined by the experience, like steel tempered by fire. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. The Habitat project would test our skills and resources. Michael's relationship with Jennifer would continue to develop. Matthew's construction would keep building homes for families throughout Connecticut. But tonight, watching my son direct cleanup operations with the natural authority of someone who had found his calling, I felt a satisfaction deeper than any business success I had ever achieved. I had my son back, and he was exactly the man I had always hoped he would become. 2 years have passed since that October evening when I stood in a ballroom full of Connecticut's elite and watched my son's world collapse around a web of lies. Today, I'm writing this story from my office at Matthew's Construction, where the sound of hammers and saws creates a symphony of honest work that never fails to make me smile. Michael sits at the desk across from mine, reviewing architectural plans for our latest project, a community center in East Hartford that will serve families for generations. His engagement ring catches the morning light as he marks revisions, and I can't help but contrast it with the gaudy diamond Amanda had demanded 2 years ago. Jennifer's ring is simple, elegant, and chosen together after 6 months of the most honest courtship I've ever witnessed. Their wedding is planned for this fall, a small ceremony in the backyard of the first Habitat home they helped build together. No country club, no hired actors, no manufactured luxury, just family, friends, and the satisfaction of celebrating. "Genuine love, Dad," Michael says, looking up from his plans. "I just got off the phone with the prosecutor's office. Amanda's appeal was denied. She'll serve the full 5-year sentence." I nod without comment. Amanda Blake has become a footnote in our family's story, a cautionary tale about the danger of substituting performance for authenticity. Her final letter to Michael, sent from federal prison 6 months ago, was an apology that seemed genuine, but came too late to matter. "Do you ever wonder," Michael continues, "what would have happened if you hadn't exposed her that night?" "Every day," I admit, "but not with regret. With gratitude that I found the courage to act when action was necessary." The question touches on something I've thought about extensively during the quiet moments of the past 2 years. Amanda's deception had been so sophisticated, her manipulation so thorough, that Michael might never have recognized her true nature without dramatic intervention. "I used to be angry that you didn't trust me to figure it out myself," Michael says, "but now I understand that love sometimes requires protecting people from their own blind spots." "The hardest part," I reply, "was knowing that saving you might cost me our relationship." But it didn't. It strengthened our relationship by removing the poison she had injected into it. Through the office window, I can see our crew working on the community center's foundation, the same methodical process of preparation and construction that has sustained Matthew's construction for 4 decades. But now Michael is part of that legacy, bringing his own vision and energy to work that matters. The habitat project we completed last year exceeded everyone's expectations. 12 families moved into homes they had helped build, creating a neighborhood where children could grow up with stability and hope. Michael and Jennifer were there for every groundbreaking, every wall raising, every key ceremony, building relationships that will last lifetimes. "Mr. Matthews," our secretary's voice comes through the intercom. "There's someone here to see you, says it's personal." I look up to see David Chen standing in our reception area, Amanda's legal husband whom she had abandoned, without explanation, when she moved to Connecticut. I haven't seen him since the trial, where he testified about Amanda's deception with a dignity that impressed everyone in the courtroom. "David," I say, standing to greet him, "this is unexpected. How can I help you?" "I wanted to thank you," he says simply, "and to apologize for what my wife put your family through." "You have nothing to apologize for. You were as much a victim as we were." "Maybe, but I should have seen the signs earlier. The unexplained absences, the financial irregularities, the way she avoided talking about her work in Connecticut." He shakes his head. "I chose to trust instead of investigate." Trust isn't a character flaw, David. Amanda exploited good qualities in both of us. We talked for 20 minutes about the aftermath of Amanda's crimes, the way her deception had rippled through multiple lives and communities. David has rebuilt his finances and his confidence. But like Michael, he struggles sometimes with trusting his own judgment about people. "I'm getting married again," he tells us before leaving, "to someone I've known for 10 years, someone whose character I understand completely. I'm not making the same mistake twice." After he leaves, Michael and I sit in contemplative silence. Amanda's victims are scattered across multiple states, all of us learning to rebuild trust and authentic relationships after her systematic manipulation. "Dad," Michael says finally, "I need to ask you something I've been thinking about for months." "Go ahead. That night at the wedding, when you had Amanda dead to rights, when you could have destroyed her completely in front of everyone, why did you stop? Why didn't you make her suffer the way she made us suffer?" It's a question I've been expecting, one that goes to the heart of what I learned about myself during those terrible months of planning Amanda's exposure. Because revenge would have changed me into someone I didn't want to be, I say carefully. And because destroying her wouldn't have healed the damage she caused to our family. But she deserved to be humiliated, maybe. But I deserved to keep my integrity intact. The moment I started enjoying someone else's pain, even someone who had earned it, I would have lost something important about who I am. Michael considers this. So showing mercy was really about protecting yourself. Showing mercy was about preserving the values your mother and I tried to instill in you. If I had turned vindictive, Amanda would have won a different kind of victory. By making you more like her. Exactly. Evil's greatest triumph isn't just causing harm, it's corrupting good people into becoming something they hate. I think about that October evening often, about the choice I made to focus on facts rather than revenge, truth rather than humiliation. Amanda's crimes spoke for themselves without dramatic embellishment from me. The door opens and Jennifer enters, carrying coffee and wearing the practical clothes of someone who spends her days on construction sites. She kisses Michael hello with the casual affection of people who genuinely enjoy each other's company. "How's the community center coming along?" she asks, studying the plans. "Ahead of schedule and under budget," Michael replies proudly. "We should have families using it by Christmas. That's wonderful. The Henderson kids are so excited about having a safe place to play basketball this winter." I watch them discuss the project's details, noting how their conversations flow naturally between personal affection and professional collaboration. This is what Amanda had prevented Michael from understanding, that the best relationships are partnerships between equals who bring out each other's strengths. "Richard," Jennifer says, turning to me, "I have something I want to discuss with both of you." "What's that?" "The city of Hartford has offered me a position heading their affordable housing initiative. It would mean leaving Habitat for Humanity and taking on a much larger role." "That's incredible," Michael says. "You'd be able to help hundreds of families instead of dozens. But it would also mean more administrative work and less hands-on construction. I'm not sure if I want to move that far from the actual building process." Her dilemma reflects something I've wrestled with throughout my career: the tension between growing your impact and staying connected to the work that gives you purpose. "What does your heart tell you?" I ask. "That I want to help as many families as possible while still being personally involved in their success stories. Then maybe the question isn't whether to take the job, but how to structure it so you can do both." We spend an hour discussing possibilities, ways Jennifer could accept the city position while maintaining hands-on involvement with specific projects, partnerships between the city and organizations like Habitat, strategies for scaling personal impact without losing authentic connections. It's the kind of problem-solving conversation I love, where business strategy serves human values rather than replacing them. Amanda had tried to convince Michael that success meant abandoning authenticity, but Jennifer represents the opposite philosophy, that the greatest achievements come from staying true to your core purpose. As the afternoon winds down, I find myself reflecting on the strange journey that brought us to this moment. Amanda's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been clarifying. Like a forest fire that clears undergrowth and allows new growth, her deception had burned away illusions and revealed what truly mattered. Michael has found meaningful work and genuine love. Our relationship has deepened through surviving a crisis that could have destroyed it. Matthew's construction continues building homes for families who deserve security and community. Even Amanda, in her own twisted way, had taught us valuable lessons about recognizing manipulation and appreciating authenticity. "Dad," Michael says as Jennifer gathers her things to leave, "can I share something with you?" "Always." I'm grateful for what happened with Amanda. The statement surprises me. Grateful. Not for the pain she caused, but for what I learned from surviving it. About real love versus performance, about authentic success versus social climbing, about the difference between people who build you up and people who tear you down. Those are expensive lessons, but valuable ones. I'll never be fooled by sophisticated manipulation again because I understand how it works. Jennifer hugs us. Both goodbye, promising to return tomorrow with her decision about the city position. After she leaves, Michael and I lock up the office and walk to our trucks in the parking lot. "One more thing, Dad," Michael says before we part ways. "I need you to know that everything you sacrificed to build this company, everything you did to protect me from Amanda, everything you've taught me about integrity and honest work, none of it was wasted." "I never thought it was wasted, son." But I did for a while. Amanda convinced me that your values were limitations rather than strengths. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember who raised me and why. We shake hands in the parking lot, a formal gesture that carries the weight of everything we've shared and overcome. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight we're both exactly where we belong. Driving home through the neighborhoods where Matthew's construction has left its mark, I think about Sarah's final words to me. Promise me you'll protect Michael from people who only see dollar signs when they look at him. I kept that promise, but not in the way either of us expected. I protected Michael not just from Amanda's financial predation, but from losing sight of his own authentic self. The greatest victory wasn't exposing her crimes, it was helping him remember who he really was underneath her manipulation. My phone buzzes with a text message from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart skips, wondering if Amanda has somehow found a way to contact us from prison. But the message is from David Chen. Thank you again for today. Talking with you and Michael helped me understand that we're all stronger for surviving Amanda's deception. Hope your family continues to thrive. I smile and delete the message. Amanda Blake is part of our past now, a chapter that taught us important lessons but no longer defines our story. The future belongs to authentic relationships, meaningful work, and the satisfaction that comes from building something lasting. At home, I sit in the chair where I first heard Amanda's betrayal through Michael's forgotten phone call, but instead of anger or sadness, I feel profound gratitude for the courage to act when action was necessary, for a son strong enough to face painful truth, for the values that sustained us through crisis and continue to guide us forward. And you, what would you have done in my position? Would you have found the strength to expose such elaborate deception, knowing it might cost you your relationship with your child? Would you have chosen facts over revenge, healing over humiliation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories of overcoming deception and protecting the people you love are what make this community so valuable. If this story touched your heart or taught you something about recognizing manipulation and authentic love, please subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most important lessons come from the most painful experiences. Thank you for joining me on this journey. In our next story, we'll explore how a grandfather's wisdom saved his family from a different kind of betrayal. Click on the link to find out how patience and preparation can triumph over even the most sophisticated deception. Until then, remember that love sometimes requires the courage to tell uncomfortable truths. The people who really care about you will thank you for it, even if it takes them time to understand. This is Richard Matthews, reminding you that integrity is the foundation upon which all lasting success is built. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.